Hello and welcome to my new video. And today I would like to show you a game Ardennes 2024, somehow of a military fiction game about a possible war in the nearby future when Germany leaves NATO and allies with Russia against other NATO countries. And in this particular game, which is about to be first of the series, we can check a German attack on the west made through Ardennes, just like in 1940 or 1944 and even 1914. There is a number of scenarios for this game, some with German units attacking, some with the Russian allies attacking, and bigger or smaller. Here we have one of the smallest scenarios for this game, where small Russian task force attacks through Elsenborn mountains on the leash, which is here. A leash is a target for both sides because the player who controls more hexes of the leash at the end of this scenario wins. This is not a very complicated game. I would say it's quite easy, but I would like to show you everything on this game. So let's take a look on the counters first to see how everything works here. Let's take this Belgian mechanized battalion, for example. It has two basic factors. Strength factor, which shows how strong this unit is, and it is used for combat, and movement factor, which shows us how many movement points this unit has. As for movement, we have three kinds of movement when it comes to the units. Some are wheeled, like this, which is because it is using infantry fighting vehicle which is wheeled. Some are tracked, like these Russian units, they are all tracked, or some are leg, like this infantry battalion, this is leg. It is used to find how many movement points unit pays to enter a hex, because wheeled units are faster on the road but slower in the terrain, while leg units are better in any kind of terrain, but they are slower. So I think it makes sense. Some units also have a star, here or here, like this, and this star shows that we have a well-trained and well-equipped unit here, and it is used for additional modifier for combat. Most of the NATO units has this star, but only a few Russian units, like this or this tank brigade, because these two tank brigades are guards tank brigades, so they are considered as elite units and they have star. Artillery. Artillery units have it a bit differently because they have two fire factors. Firepower for attack and firepower for defense. So if this artillery unit attacks or supports attack, it uses 4, but if it supports defense, it is using 2. We have also HQ units. They are not combat units, but they can support combat. We have also special forces counters. We are using. I will show you later how to use this, and we have air forces counters and helicopters counters, and I will show you how to use them as well. I should mention this. When you play against other human player, you may use camouflage counters. You place these counters on your units, so enemy doesn't know what this unit is until there is a combat. When combat starts, you have to remove camouflage counter, but when the unit is out of zone of control of enemy unit, camouflage counter is back. I mentioned zone of control. I think it is quite common for the war games. Zone of control covers all the hexes neighboring to the one with unit. Artillery and HQs haven't zone of control, but all the other units have. When unit enters enemy zone of control, it has to stop. It can't move any further. You can't move throughout enemy zone of control. So, for example, let's assume that in the movement phase, this Russian unit entered this hex, and it has to stop. It can't move any further because it is in the enemy zone of control. But in the next in the next movement phase, if it's still here, it can leave this zone of control here, or here, but it can't move. It can't move in the zone of control, so it can't enter this hex or this hex. This hex can be entered anyway because we have a red triangle here, so it means this is impassable hex for all the kind of units safe to the leg units. So all the motorized and mechanized units can't enter hexes with red triangle. This is marked for very high mountains that are impassable for such units, safe to the roads, of course. If there is a road, unit can't move through the road, and because of that it can't pass these impassable hexes. Otherwise it can't move throughout them. I think this is all when it comes to the basics of the game. Of course, I will show you later much more, because that's just the basics. Gameplay is divided into turns, and each turn is divided into phases. We are gonna play entire turns with everything, I hope. So let's start with the first phase, which is air phase. In this phase, both players have to choose how many of their air points they are gonna use to gain air advantage. So let's check. Russians start with 4 air points. They don't have to spend all of these. They may spend only 1, 2, or 3, or 4. Depends on how much they like. So I think Russian player will spend 2. So I mark that my total strength air points are 2, and my spent air points are 2, and my total points are 4. Sorry. While in this turn, NATO player has only 1 air point, so he spends it as well. So Russians have 2 air points, NATO has 1 air point. I'm gonna make a roll for each side. First for Russians, they rolled 2, plus 2 it gives us 4, and for NATO it has 1, plus 1 it gives us 2. So Russians win, and they have air advantage in this turn, so they will be able to perform air missions in this turn, while NATO won't be able to do it. And next I'm gonna make a roll for the losses because of the air defense of each side. I have a Polish edition of this game, so my rulebook is in Polish, but this game was released in English as well, so if you will purchase it from the publisher, you may ask for English edition and you will get this all in English. So I will have to tell you how it works. We have a air losses table for Russians and for allies. I'm gonna roll for allies first. But it won't be necessary, sorry. Oh no, it will be, because I rolled 1, so they are losing 1 strength points, so they lost the entire air strength points that they have. And now for Russians, 4, they lost 3 strength points. They spent 2 of their strength points. They can't lost more than they used, so they lost 2 strength points. I'm gonna mark it with here. so they have only 2 strength points, but they still have air control, and they will be able to use their combat helicopters if they would like. So that's all when it comes to the air phase. Next we have artillery fire phase. In this phase you can use your artillery to fire on the enemy units, but sorry, I think this unit moved here, and I'm gonna check when it was at the beginning. I moved it only on purpose to show you. Oh, it was here. But you can't fire on the units that you plan to attack in this turn. You will be able to use your artillery to support your attacks later, but now when you perform a barrage, you can't fire on the enemy units that you plan to attack. We have 3 kinds of artillery in this game, but here we have only one kind in this scenario. We have self-propelled artillery, but we have also rocket artillery and carried artillery. Rocket and self-propelled artillery moves normally, but field artillery has to be turned into movement side to perform any movement, because it can't move when it is in the fire position. As you can see, it has movement points 0. But we are not gonna use this in this scenario. So let's make fire attacks for Russians, because this is their phase. So we have 1 artillery unit for Russians. It has firepower of 5, but like I said, I have to choose a unit that I don't want to attack. I plan to attack this and this Belgian units. So I think I will fire on this battalion. I have self-propelled artillery has a range of 10 hexes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They are in a range, and they are in the mountain. So I need to take artillery fire table. My strength is 5, and because they are in the mountains, I have to distract 3 from my firepower. So I have 5 minus 3, it gives me 2. So I'm gonna use this verse that shows that you can see it has very small chances to hit anyone, but it won't hurt to try. I roll 9, so it is miss. So that's all when it comes to the artillery fire phase, and next we're gonna perform movement during Russian movement phase. In the movement phase, you may move your units in the range that your movement points allows you, and you have to pay a number of the movement points that certain hexes requires. But in this phase you can also perform some other actions. First of these is a use of your special forces. You can use special forces for multiple purposes. You can use them to help your artillery. I could use it here, but I didn't, sorry. I will use it later maybe. You can use your special forces to destroy bridges or to attack enemy HQs. And I'm gonna use this this special forces group to attack this Belgian HQ. I'm gonna place it here, and I'm gonna make a roll with 2d6. And now I need to check. To successfully attack enemy HQ, I have to make 2d6 roll, and if I will roll 11 or 12, HQ is eliminated. if I would roll between 8 or 10, HQ is disorganized and it won't be able to support its unit in this turn. And if I rolled 7 or less, attack was ineffective. If there is any other enemy unit on the same hex, like here, I have to subtract 1 from my roll result. So I'm gonna make a roll. I rolled 5, minus 1, it's 4. It is fail. Special forces gained nothing. And next, after the action, I have to make a roll to check if the unit survived. I rolled 1, and if I roll 1 or 1, 3, unit is eliminated. So this special forces group is eliminated. It gained nothing. I have one more group of the Russian special forces, but I'm not gonna use it. This time I will save it for later. I think I will find some good purpose in the next turns. So I can start movement. I can move my units, but there is also one more option for me that I will show you soon. First, let's talk about movement. This tank brigade has 7 movement points, and it is on the main road. This white line is a main road, and on the main road I have to pay half of the movement point for each hex. So half, 1, and now I have to stop because I entered enemy zone of control. Next this, a half, 1, 1.5, and they are stopping as well because they entered enemy zone of control. As for this unit, I'm gonna mark it as strategic movement. This count, when I place such counters on my units, they have to stop and they can't move in the movement phase. But after combat phase, they are able to move. So, if I will attack successfully here and maybe eliminate this Belgian unit, this unit will be able to move here and later. Follow here, here, here. Of course, if I will be lucky enough to destroy this unit. And I'm not sure if I will be, but I'm going to show you how it works. Next here. This is mountain road and this is secondary road. And for each of these, tracked unit pays 1 movement point. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's all. And now, and this also you can't enter another hex on the mountain road where there is an other unit. Mountain roads are very narrow roads that you can't cross other units on the same hex. So I can't move this unit here or here because there is a mountain road here. So I'm gonna move this tank brigade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I think I will use this mechanized brigade for the strategic movement as well. Of course, it might be just useless to let them stay here and not perform any attacks, but maybe it will let them to make some breakthrough. We'll see. Now let's resolve combat. First here we have 6 and 9, so we have 15 against 3. Russians declare to not use their artillery, and Belgians decide to not use their artillery as well. But Russians may use their combat helicopters. They have 4 points of their combat helicopters, so they decide to use 2. So they have 17 against 3. So there they are stronger. Now let's take a look on the combat results table. Russians have 17 against 3. This gives us odds 6 to 1. Next we have modifiers to use. In this phase, Russians have 2 points of the electronic warfare. They decide to use one of these for this combat, so they gain +1 to 7 to 1. Next, they have 1 star here, so they have another +1. So we move to the 8 to 1. And that's all when it comes to attacker, and now it's time for defenders modifiers. First, defender has a star as well, so we move to 7 to 1. Also, they are in the range of their HQ. There is 10 hexes range for the HQ, so we move one to the left as well, so we have 6 to 1. And they are defending in the heals. Heals gives us +2 for the defender, so 1, 2, and we have final odds in the 4 to 1 column. Now I make a 2d6 roll. I rolled 7. In the 4 it gives us B2. It means that defender has to retreat 2 hexes. 1, 2. And because he was made to retreat 2 hexes, this unit has to make a roll for disorganization. Because every time unit retreats 2 or more hexes, it has to check if it wasn't disorganized. To check if such unit wasn't disorganized, you have to make a 2d6 roll, and if you roll 2, 3, or 11, or 12, such unit is disorganized. I make a roll, I rolled 6, so this unit is safe. Russians can make a pursuit, 1, 2. And that's all for this combat. And we have one more combat here. Russians are much stronger here. They have 9, plus 6, this is 15, and plus another 9, it is 24. They decide to use their artillery as well. So they have +5, so they have 29, and allies decide to use their artillery as well. So they have 2 plus 5, so they have 5 against 29. It gives us 6 to 1 as initial odds. One Russian unit has a star, so we move one right. Allied unit has a star as well, so we move 1 left. Allied unit is in the range of their HQ, so we move 1 left. And Allied unit is on the mountain, which gives us +3. 1, 2, 3. So the final odds are 2 to 1, but Russians decide to use their second point of the electronic warfare, so we move to the 3 to 1. I make a roll, and I rolled 11. This is quite bad for Russians, I guess. We have -1, -1. This means that each of the fighting units has to lose 1 strength level. And you have to remember that if you have a situation like this here, when there are units with stars and without stars, the first loss has to be always taken from the unit with a star. So this Russian unit loses 1 strength level, and this Belgian unit loses 1 strength level. So that's all when it comes to the combat phase. And now we have strategic movement phase. In this phase you can move your unit that are marked with strategic movement. It didn't help much here, because no Belgian units was shattered or forced to retreat many hexes away, so I can move them 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Also, in this phase, in the strategic movement phase, you can't enter enemy zone of control. So I can move this unit here, but I can't move it here, because such hex would be in the enemy zone of control. So that would be all when it comes to the Russian combat phase, and now we have Russian supply phase. It is mentioned in this particular scenario to ignore supply rules for this scenario, but I think I will use them anyway, just to show you how this works. But for now, all the Russian units have supply, because to have a supply, unit has a link with a road to their supply base. For this game, for Russians, eastern edge of the board is their supply base. So all the Russian units have normal link with this edge, so they are supplied. So that's all when it comes to the Russians. Now we are starting a number of phases for Allied player. First is air phase, but since Allied player has no air control, he can't use his air forces. So we are moving into artillery fire phase. In this phase I can use my artillery unit to fire on any of the enemy forces. Also, I have an option to use thermobaric ammunition. I can use this kind of fire only once per turn, and only against enemy units that are not in the zone of controls of my own units. So I would love to fire on this stack, but I can't because there is an Allied unit here on the neighboring stack. I could only use it to fire on this or that counter. Otherwise it is impossible for me. But let's assume I would like to fire on this stack because it's tempting to destroy or damage or disorganize such a group. So what can I do? I can just fire with this artillery, but I also can use my special forces to help my artillery to target enemy. To use it, I have to spend one special forces counter, and thanks to that I have to add 2 to the strength of the firing unit. I also can, if I would have air control, use my air forces to perform joint strike with artillery, and then their fire is added to the strength of artillery. But since Allies have no air forces in this turn because they lost, so that's all I can do. So I have 4 plus 2, this means I have 6, and Russians are in the hills, so I have -2. So I check my artillery table. I had 4 plus 2 because of the special forces, it has 6, and -2 because of the hills, it gets 4 again. I rolled 2d6, and I rolled 4. 4 means that unit has to be has to perform disorganization check. I rolled 12. Wow. So Russians are disorganized. What does it mean? I place disorganization counter on this stack, and as long as it has such a counter, its strength is halved in both attack and defense. So how to lose such a counter? To lose such a counter and to be well organized again, a unit has to not combat and not move for the one entire turn. So now it is in the zone of control of the enemy, so it makes it harder, because if Belgians would retreat from such area, and in the next turn this stack will not move and will not combat and will not be fired by other units, it will be able to remove. this counter. So quite annoying thing, as you can guess. And next I have to check, make a check for my Special Forces counter. I rolled 4, so it survived. It is flipped on the after action side, and it is placed in the after action box on the board for the Allied forces. So in the next phase it will be flipped, and in the next turn it will be flipped, and in the next turn it will return to the Special Forces area, Special Forces ready area, so it will be able to be used again. So that's all when it comes to the artillery fire phase, and next we are going to perform Allied movement phase. First, I'm gonna move this unit here. Why? Because if I would stay here, I would have to attack these Russians. When unit has enemy in its zone of control, it has to attack such enemy units. But I don't want to attack these Russians, so I have to retreat 1 hex. Next, this unit. This unit has a number of options. First, it just can retreat here, here, and here as it likes. But it may also fortify itself. To fortify, unit has to not move in such a phase. You put fortifications counter below this unit, and it gains -1 on its favor modifier for the defense. But if it will be forced to retreat, it loses such a counter. Also, if unit is fortified in the town or city, like here we have town, it gains -2. Not -1, like in the other kind of terrain, but -2 because of the buildings. So, quite a useful thing for the defender. So I think I will do that. Also, when unit is fortified, it doesn't have to attack enemy units in its zone of control. That's the only exception. Otherwise, it would have to attack these Russians, which would be extremely bad idea. But since it's fortified, it doesn't have to. It keeps defensive posture. It just doesn't want to let Russian pass. Okay, time for the other Russian units. So let's make a move for this Belgian unit. Here we have secondary road, which is half of movement point per hex for wheeled units. So 1/2, 1, 1.5, 2, and here we have main road. Main road is 1 and 3. So we spent 1 movement point, 1 and 1, 3, 2 and 1 and 2, 3, 2. And I will stay here. Why? You will see soon. And next, of course I'm not showing you a strategy how to win, but instead I would like to show you as many options of this game as possible. So I'm gonna move this Belgian unit as well. 1/2, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5. So what I did here, I just encircled Russians. Why? Because all these Russian units are out of supply now. Take note that in this particular scenario, supply rules are not in effect. But for the purpose of this movie, I wanted to show you how it works. So I made my move, and that's all. I don't have to attack any of the Russian... Oh, sorry, one more thing I should do. For this unit, I would like to fortify it as well. I can't fortify artillery or headquarters. They are not combat units per se, so they can't. They don't have a zone of control. They can't fortify and stuff like this. So that would be all when it comes to the Allied movement phase. And next we have Allied combat phase, but Allies do not have to attack because none of their units has enemy units in its zone of control. Save to this battalion, but it's fortified, so it doesn't have to attack enemy forces. Next, we have Allied supply phase, but all Allied units are in supply, so they don't have the problems like that, while Russians might have problems in their next turn. So let's move to the turn 2. I planned to play just one turn, but I think I will play one more turn, just to show you how some other things work in this game. Now we start with reinforcements. Each scenario has a table with reinforcements noted. In this scenario we have no additional units in this coming, but as you may see in this turn there is a lot of odd units for both sides coming as reinforcements. But that's not all. Next we have here are Allies, here are Russians. So we played turn 1, so we played turn 2. Play turn 2 next. First we have to check how many electronic warfare points Russians will have. It says 2, so I take Russian electronic warfare counter with 2 and place it somewhere in the Russian unit's Russian player range so he can use it. Next, special forces. Russians have 2 special forces counters available, but they already lost one, so they can use only one. Next, they gain +2 air forces points and +2 combat helicopter points. So I move to the Russian air tracks and move Russian combat helicopters. Return to their original, and they gain +2, and they have +2 for air forces. As for Allies, they have 1 special forces unit, and they have it, and they gain +2 for air forces and +2 for combat helicopters. So I move combat helicopters 1, 2, and air forces +2. And that's all when it comes to the reinforcements. We are returning to the usual schedule of using our units. We are starting with air phase of the Russian forces again, and first we have to check air advantage. Russians have 4 points of air forces, so they decide to spend 2 of them, while Allies have 2 points, so they decide to spend just 1 of them. So Russians have 2, Allies have 1, so we get +1 for the roll for the Russian forces. Russians 3 + 1, it gives us 4, and Allies 5. So Allies won. Good for them. So I have to make a roll for air defense. First for Russians. 2. They lost 2 air forces points, and for Allies 4. So they have no losses. They have still 1 air forces point to spend. Good for them. Like I said before, none of the players gain additional units in this scenario. But for the purpose of this movie, I decided to introduce some, just to show you some other stuff. So we have a Russian movement phase now. Sorry, first we have Russian Fireface. Artillery fire phase, and in this phase Russians can use their artillery to fire on the enemy units. I decided to use this artillery to fire on this allied battalion. Russians have 5, and we have hills. Hills gives us -2, so Russians are firing with strength of 3. That will be a hard thing. 6 in the 3 means nothing, so Russians can't fire anymore. So next we have Russian movement phase, and now you can see Russians are in the trap. So they have to use some of their forces to force this Belgian battalion out of this place, because otherwise all these units will be marked as out of supply, and it will be a problem. For now, we have a river here, and for the tracked units we have to pay +2 to cross such a river. So I would pay +2 and another +2 to enter hills, so I spent 4 movement points to enter such a hex, and now this unit moves half, 1 and 2, 3. So it's here. I hope it will be enough. I'm not sure. And this group has to retreat 1 hex at last, because otherwise it would have to attack these Belgians. It is still possible to win such a battle, but it would be very hard for Russians, because they are in the mountains, they are fortified, they have their HQ active, so that would be a hard thing to do. Next, so I think that would be all when it comes to the Russian movement. You can see it goes quite smoothly because it is very small scenario. In the bigger scenarios you play on the entire map and you have much more units to use. But now we are playing this small scenario just to show you how everything works. So let's fight this combat. I'm gonna use these 2 brigades, so I have 12 movement points. They will be supported by this artillery, so they have 17 movement points. And allies have their air control, so Russians can't use their air forces, but allies can. So allies decide to use 2 strength points of their combat helicopters. When you are using your combat helicopters, you have to halve their strength when they are supporting defense. So I spent 2 strength points of my combat helicopters, so I will be able to add additional +1 here. But first I have to make a roll for anti-air defense. I rolled 6, so it's okay. So I have 3 +1 because of the combat helicopters. I may place them here just to remember. So I have 4, and I'm gonna use this artillery, so I will have 6. So I will have 6 against 17. It gives us 3-to-1 odds. Let's move to the combat table. We have 3-to-1. Allied unit has a white star, so we move 1 in favor for them. They are in the range of their HQ, which is here, so they gain an additional +1. And they are on the hills, so they have additional +1. So the final odds are 1 to 3. So that would be hard nut to crack for Russians. We will see. I rolled 9. This gives us A2 -1 and -1. So defender loses 1 strength level. So Belgian unit is flipped. But attacker has to retreat 2 hexes and lose 1 strength level. So Russian forces has to 1, 2, and 1, 2, and one of them loses 1 strength level, and also because they retreated 2 hexes, they have to make disorganization rolls. First this 27 brigade, it passed, and then 15 brigade, it failed. It failed, so it's disorganized. I'm gonna remove this counter. And now we have a Russian supply phase. I have to check if Russian units are in supply or not, because if they are not, they might suffer some problems. They have to have had a road link with the eastern edge of the board. So, and such a link can't cross a hex with enemy unit or zone of control of such a unit. So, for example, this unit cannot trace supply line through this hex because there is an enemy unit here, and such a hex is in its zone of control. Same goes to this unit. Here, 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 sorry, here and here. It is out of supply for them, so they can make it here, and here a line goes smoothly to their supply base. So okay, and now here they can do it. Yes, they can. Oh, sorry, I'm not sure. They have to pay 2 movement points here, 2 movement points here, and finally here they can trace it. But I have to check how many movement points of the supply Russian players can use. Eight. What do I mean? If you can't trace your line of supply through the road hexes, you have a limit of movement point hexes that are checked in the wheeled units style to see if you can trace your line of supply through the other hexes. So, for example, this Russian unit can't trace its line of supply through this hex or this hex, but it can do this here. So here we have a road, so it doesn't have to pay additional movement points for supply, but here we have no road, so it pays 2 movement points to enter to trace a line of supply here, and another 2 movement points to trace a line of supply here. So we have 4 movement points, and then road goes smoothly to its supply base. But if this unit would be here, so none of these units would have a line of supply. Let's assume it happened like this, just because I would like to show you how it works. In such a case, you have to place out of supply counters on these units. A unit that has no supply has its strength halved in the attack only. It defends normally, but for every next turn that it has no supply, you have to remove such a counter and take a counter with higher value. So if it remained out of supply in the next turn as well, its out of supply level would increase to the level of 2. And then, if it's 2 or higher, you have to make a roll. If you would roll, if you would gain a result which is lesser than this level, such a unit is eliminated. So, if I would roll 1, in the next turn, of course, such unit would be eliminated. But this unit was here, so all these units are in supply. So let's move to allies, and first we have allied Fireface. Allies have only one air forces point to spend, so it wouldn't get them much. So let's move to the allied artillery Fireface. I can use this artillery to fire on one of the Russian forces, and now, since they are here and they are not in the zone of control of any of the allied units, I can use thermobaric ammunition finally. I placed this counter on this artillery unit, and its strength is doubled. So it had 4 plus another 4, it gives 8. So it fires on this Russian stack with firepower of 8 instead of 4. Russians are in the mountain, so it gains -3. So I had 4, it was doubled, so I turned into 8, and because of the mountains we have -3, so I have 5. So I make a roll. I rolled 5. So I have to make a roll for disorganization for Russians. And if I have stack, I roll once for entire stack. I do not roll for each of the units, but instead I roll for the stack. I rolled 5, so they are fine. Next I move to the Allied movement phase. In this phase I also can use my special forces. I know Allies had only one special forces counter for this scenario, but I would like to use another one just for the just to show you what other things special forces can do. I would like to destroy this bridge because it helps Russian to gain a supply here. So I place my special forces unit here, and I have to make a roll. To destroy a bridge, special forces have to roll 4-6 on the 1d6. But if one side of the bridge is controlled by the enemy, I have to subtract -1 from my roll. So normally I would destroy a bridge while gaining 4-6, but now, because there is a Russian unit, I will destroy it only if I gain 6 or 5. I rolled 5. Wow, that was lucky. So I place destroyed bridge counter here, and this bridge is considered destroyed as long as it won't be repaired. And now I have to check if this unit survived, of course, as well. I get 5, so it survived. And that would be all. I'm sorry. I think I would do some other nasty thing for Russians. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I would try to attack this artillery. I'm moving. I know Russians shouldn't do anything like this, letting their forces to be surrounded like that. But I'm doing everything for the purpose of showing you how this game works. So that would be all when it comes to the movement phase, and next we move to the combat phase. I'm gonna remove this counter, and now this allied unit attacks this artillery group. First, I have to check my strength. Allies have 3 strength, and they have still 1 air forces point to use. So they use it, and they have now +4. They have now 4. And I'm gonna use this artillery, so I have +4, so I have 8, against 1, because when a lone artillery unit is attacked by the enemy forces, it has only 1 strength point. If it would be another Russian unit here, then artillery would be able to use its defensive fire strength, but if it's alone, it can defend only with 1 point. So we have 8 against 1. As you may remember, Russians still have 2 points of electronic warfare. They didn't use it in their combat phase, so they're gonna use it now. So let's move to the combat table. We have 8 to 1 as a basic, and next we have +1 because allied unit has a star, so we move to the 9 to 1, and let's check if it is in the range of its HQ. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No, it is not in the range of its HQ, so we gain no additional support from HQ, so we stay with 9 to 1. And next, Russians used 2 points of electronic warfare, so we move 2 steps left, and then Russians are in the town, so we move 1 step left. So we have 6 to 1. I make a roll. 9 in 6 to 1. This means B2 minus and dot. Russian unit has to retreat 2 hexes and make a disorganization roll. It passed, and now, because of the dot, attacker has to perform disorganization check as well. They passed, so they can pursue enemy unit. So that would be all when it comes to the Allied combat phase, and now we have Allied supply phase, but I think all Allied units are in supply. Are they? Let's check for this. They can trace their supply line here, because there is a Russian unit here, but they can spend 2 movement points to move here, and no problem. All the other Allied force groups have their can trace their supply lines with ease. So that would be all for this game. Of course, this scenario is much longer. It takes 10 turns to play it, but my goal was to show you the basics of the rules. If you will have any other questions about this game, feel free to state your question in the comments, and I will do my best to answer you. Thank you for watching. I hope it would be helpful.